And it can really feel like, where do I fit?
Yeah.
Does anyone see me? And if you are in that space, know that you're not alone. And we may not talk about this openly, but I was so glad when my friend said, when did I become invisible? I was like, yes, that's it.
When I turned 50, something flipped for me. And it was this thought that kept on reoccurring in my head, being like, I don't have to do that anymore. It's kind of like, I don't have to play certain games anymore.
Right.
I don't have to do certain things just to be accepted by a certain crowd. That somehow at 50 gives me a freedom to say, I'm not doing that. Good morning. This is Brenda Yoder with the Midlife Moms podcast, and I'm introducing us for the first time today because we are recording in my home, and sitting right beside me is my friend Amelia Rhodes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited. This is the first time we've recorded together in person.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing some back-to-back episodes that we're recording in person together, but we're excited to be here, and you literally can join us as we have our coffee both in hand in my personal office here, and you can go visit us on YouTube where you can actually see us doing all of that together. But today we're going to talk about insecurity. And so Amelia, why don't you kind of start off, because this has been a topic we've been talking privately together about for a while.
Insecurity is a big one. And I think it's something that took me by surprise when I hit 40. Maybe it was more like 41, 42. For some reason, I was excited about turning 40. Like I felt like I was finally really an adult and people would take me seriously. And then very soon after, I realized, oh, I'm in my 40s. They don't take me as seriously as I thought they would, reinforced by my teenagers almost every day of, you're not cool. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not as smart as you thought you were. And one of the things that has hit me in the 40s is, oh no, this insecurity of like, I'm not as smart as I thought I was, or I really don't know what I'm doing. And the insecurity of, okay, I'm 40, like, shouldn't I have arrived by now? Shouldn't I be farther down the road in certain things, whether it's personally or professionally? And then not to mention just the body starts to fall apart. The other day, I was walking up the stairs at church, and every step, one of my knees just felt like it was going to give out. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? These are just the stairs. I'm too young to need to take the elevator all the time. And so some of those things have been what have hit me early on. And I think we're going to talk about it's different in the 40s and the 50s. But Brenda, what were some of the signs for you of entering this kind of insecurity of middle age?
Yeah, when I was 40, similar things. In fact, I quit my career as a teacher and had entered grad school at 40. So it's kind of a monumental year for me, but it was a lot of actually memory was a big thing for me. And then even, I know we probably don't want to talk about our female condition, but
it's very real.
But it is very real. And what I realized was I kind of felt like I finally had my body back. Like after I've had 4 kids. So all of my 20s and early 30s was really being pregnant. And then my 30s was kind of like getting my body back to normal. And then it was just like I finally had this confidence. And then all of a sudden, everything in my body started changing. And it kind of mirrored everything else that you kind of think you have this confidence, like you mentioned, and then life just starts changing. And I think raising teenagers made everything that I knew kind of up in arms.
Right.
And so your body's changing, your family really is changing, your confidence starts changing. So is that something you have noticed in your 40s?
Yes. And I think part of it too is, for me, I went back to work in my late 30s, mid to late 30s. And so here I am approaching 40. Wow, I've only been back to work after staying home and doing a lot of freelance work and contract work, but a first back to work job in my late 30s. So here I am 40, feeling like I'm starting over.
Yeah.
And I've heard that from a number of women who stayed home with their children or worked part-time or did contract work while their kids were home, who now are trying to re-enter the workforce and feeling behind, feeling very insecure in their professional capabilities. Do I have anything to offer? Have I missed so much time that I can't get hired? And I've seen women, and this was my journey too, hunt for a job for a year, 2 years, and you're like, I'm qualified. I had all of this experience. What happened? And so even shifting cultural perspective of what you bring to the table as someone who may not have been in the formal workforce for a decade, but the skill and wisdom and experience, that was a huge insecurity for me.
Sure.
In that shift.
Sure. And I too. So I left a profession that I knew to enter then 3 years of graduate school among a cohort of 20 and early 30s. And I ordered a computer online, like a laptop. It came to my house. All of my kids were high school and younger. So at that time we weren't quite as techy. This was in 2008. But I learned all those things on my own. Like I learned how to do Blackboard. I learned how to work this computer from scratch. And what I found was I had so much insecurity because I'd left a profession I knew, and I also stayed at home too. So I went back to work in my mid 30s, but I was learning something so new and so foreign. But what I had to often tell myself, which is something we can actually offer to all of us here as midlife moms, whether you are in a profession or still not working professionally, perhaps, but doing all the work that you do as mom also, is something that has helped me is taking confidence from those other things that I know I can do,
right,
and bring it. So it's kind of like you're taking confidence from one realm and bringing it into another realm. And that actually has been helpful for me. Not only helpful for me then, but also helpful for me in the recent last few years as my careers keep on kind of shifting and changing.
right. One thing that I have heard from several of my friends who worked all along and never took a break from their career was that insecurity of, as their kids are reaching teenage years, and really all along, of like, am I doing a good job? Am I balancing work and home life? And that has been a struggle for me too, as I've gone back to work. That whole, am I doing enough for my family? Yet also, how do I keep up with my career? And so it's a lot on our plates.
Yeah, it is.
You mentioned bringing confidence from one area into another. And I kept thinking how maybe I used to be confident as a parent until I hit midlife.
Yeah.
My 40s, and my kids turn teens. And then all of a sudden I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, because I don't.
Yeah.
I've never parented teens before. And they remind you, unlike toddlers, how all the things you're doing are wrong.
Yeah. And they remind you, you have to kind of learn to laugh at ourselves, because they'll remind you, like, this has been my experience. I don't think kids want their moms to look like, it's kind of like they don't want us to be the dorky midlife moms. And when I was writing Fledge, one of the images that I used in one of the chapters was like, as your kids are getting ready for graduation, or they're finishing all these things, like, we're wanting to take all these photos. And I remember my boys especially did not want me to take photos of them. And so they're always like, no, I don't need a picture. And in my mind, I'm like one of these, moms with like the fanny pack on, although I know those are popular right now, but like, kind of with the Kodak camera, creeping around the corner trying to take pictures. But I think that's part of the whole vulnerability piece, is that we truly are doing the things that we have all of these different stereotypes about, of in our 20s and 30s, like, we're not going to be that midlife mom. And yet reality is, these really important things are happening during midlife. And so it really is this area of a new type of vulnerability, because when our kids are young, we're that kind of the experts on what they should be doing. We're still young enough. We can be the cool mom who can look all put together and yet still show up at all the sporting events. But now our bodies are aging. We are emotional, not just because of hormones, but because our kids really are becoming their own people. They're growing and changing. You just got a new driver in your home. And we are emotional about these things.
Right.
And we want to hold on to some things too. And so there's this whole tension of multi-layered insecurities, like who we
Yeah.
are as people, who we are as a mom, who we are in our role, whether it's work or at home, our body's changing. Everything we knew just seems to be turned upside down.
I would agree with that in every area of life. And I find myself asking, where do I fit?
Mhm.
And I had a friend say to me recently, who is also in her 40s, when did I become invisible?
Yeah.
Wherever you go, almost it can feel like, well,
Mhm.
the attention is on those who are young, 20s, 30s, or on
Mhm.
those who are older. And this in
Mhm.
between is, where do I fit? Do I belong? And does anyone see me?
Yeah.
Your kids don't need you like they used to. Your marriage, you're so busy at times, each doing your own thing and just keeping the family running, that you may not feel seen there.
Yeah.
You may not feel seen at work because there are the younger ones coming up who are quick and smart at technology, and maybe, you're struggling to learn things. And it can really feel like, where do I fit?
Yeah.
Does anyone see me? And if you are in that space, know that you're not alone. And we may not talk about this openly, but I was so glad when my friend said, when did I become invisible? I was like, yes, that's it.
Yeah. And I'm just processing that as you've said that. And I think, we have mentioned maybe on a prior broadcast, but talking about it just a little bit, like even with social media. So I think the whole thing of the insecurities is, when you're raising teens and young adults, we don't post as much on social media because so many things are happening in our homes that we really can't put out there.
Right.
And so while younger moms may be posting all the fun things with their kids and even talking about a lot of those mom issues on social media, all of a sudden we can't talk about the fight that we just had with our teen. We can't talk about their issues because that just is not okay to do that publicly. And then when your kids become adults, they don't want their moms talking about their world on their mom's social media. And we've talked before about how friendships change. And so even some of those friendships that you used to have when you were younger, they're just not available because in some ways we're all trying to just manage our own family.
Right.
And I know that was our experience, was there for a season. It was all I could do just to give all of my energy to my own kids and really meet their needs, and even the deep problems and the deep struggles within your own family system.
And I think in a year like what we've just been through, that feeling invisible, unseen, and just trying to focus on your own family has been so huge for all of us in just keeping our teens and young adults
Yeah.
above water in their own life.
Yeah. And then I think, kind of going to how is insecurity different in your 50s than your 40s? So I think the majority of people in their 40s still have kids in the home. I mean, some may or may not. That's pretty fluid. I've got a good friend who's several years younger than I am, and she was empty nest like at 42. And I wasn't empty nest till I was 52. And, but we were watching the movie Failure to Launch for the first time the other week. And even though it's a comedy, the mom in the movie said something at the end that really was, I think, a really important thought. She was afraid of her son leaving because she was worried that her husband would not like her anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that concept is part of this insecurity when you get to your 50s. So when you get to your 50s, I think there's a little bit more of confidence in some ways, as in you're kind of at this peak of, well, for most of us we've gone through menopause. 51 is the average age that people go through menopause. So we aren't trying to be young anymore. When you're 50, you shouldn't be trying, you shouldn't try to be young anymore. I mean, It's great when you're 40s, you can still kind of get away with, but most of us should not be that 50-year-old who's trying to look like we did when we were 25, even 35. But there's a different insecurity that, not just the empty nest brings, but the insecurity of not wanting to be old. So I think there's kind of this perception of, well, 40 is old, but I'm still not old. I'm on the young side. Whereas 50s, it's like, well, I might as well be 70. Like I've said that in conversations. When I first 50, I was like, I might as well be 70 because I'm just old now. And so there is an insecurity of Am I relevant anymore?
Right.
Um, am I, am I, does anyone even care anymore? Like, has everyone just go ahead and put me in that old box?
Mhm.
And there's something about having kids in your home that does keep you young, that does still give you purpose. And I expressed this to someone the other day. I said, there's something about just having a child in home, even if it's a young adult living at home, that when at the end of the day, when you're done with your work, you still have something that's relevant and life-giving that you don't have to think about, that you can actually, tend to, that is life-giving back.
Mhm.
And for me, what is probably one of the hardest pieces um, is, at the end of my workday, which I love my job as an elementary counselor, but my husband, I come home, and while I enjoy being with him, like between 6 o'clock and when we go to bed at 9, there's just this emptiness.
Mhm.
And part of it, I truly do enjoy it. There's no demands. I truly can unwind. But all winter long, like just the thought of like going home to a dark house, doing the same thing over again in the evenings, is hard.
Mhm. It's a completely different phase. And
Yeah.
everything that you knew and took joy in or comfort in has shifted. And you're
Yeah.
really starting over.
Yeah.
There's an insecurity that comes with starting over.
There is. And it's not, honestly, I'm glad we don't have kids at
Mhm.
home. Like, I really don't want to parent. I've been parenting teenagers for a long time. I don't want to. There's nothing in me that wants to parent a teenager again.
Mhm.
But the, like, what do we do now that isn't like, is it okay just to sit and watch a movie on a weeknight if that helps you relax? Is it okay to do that night after night? Do I need to be figuring something else out, or is it okay just to be and to actually, I don't know. It's and then there's all the marriage things of like, well, when your kids are gone, you should be trying to like focus on your marriage and all this other stuff. And I'm just still tired.
Yeah.
Like, part of it is I want time for myself, and that's maybe selfish to say that out loud, but
It's important, though, to take care of yourself. And you gave so much for so many years that it's okay to take time for yourself.
yeah. But then even that's like that insecurity. What does that look like?
Right.
So
It's
I don't
almost
know.
refinding what you love to do, just you. You're not sitting in the stands anymore. You're
Right.
not running them to all of their activities.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy?
Yeah. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So where do we go from here? We've addressed, we have different insecurities in our 40s and our 50s. We're starting over. There are all of these changes. And you said something earlier that I thought is a great place to start, of how do we move and say, so long, insecurity, or I see you, but I'm moving on anyway.
Yeah. So I think we had this conversation that has been in my mind, and I think I verbalized it. You and I were talking earlier in our time together, is one thing for me in saying so long to insecurity is actually there is a confidence that comes with being midlife. There's a confidence of saying, I don't have to do that anymore.
Mhm.
When I turned 50, something flipped for me. And it was this thought that kept on reoccurring in my head, being like, I don't have to do that anymore. It's kind of like, I don't have to play certain games anymore.
Right.
I don't have to do certain things just to be accepted by a certain crowd, that somehow 50 gives me freedom to say, I'm not doing that. And I started saying that kind of jokingly in the house. And I think it bothered my husband for a while, because he kept on saying, why do you always say that? You've been saying like, I'm 50, I don't have to do that anymore. And I told him, well, it's not like against you, but it's kind of a declaration for me to say, there are certain areas of my life that I think you just acknowledge you were striving for acceptance, or striving, there's a peer pressure among parents. I think I've talked about that before, mentioned that, of, there's an expectation when you're still parenting and you're going to high school events and things like that, of having to fit the mold, or seeing a mom who is like Barbie, and she does everything well, and you're still feeling so insecure anymore.
Mhm.
So now no one cares what I do. It's part of that being invisible.
Yeah.
No one really cares what I do on my own time now. And there is a little bit of freedom with that.
Right. I was going to say, I think that's a bit freeing as well.
Yeah.
You get to set what's right for you in this
Yeah.
stage. So I love that you said you're kind of making these declarations. So maybe start with some declarations of, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to be that anymore. And I see that as freeing.
Yeah.
I think one of the things too is to recognize that you are seen. And one of my favorite names for God is the God who sees. And it comes from a story in the Old Testament of the Bible where a woman feels very unseen and she is running away from a very challenging situation, and God meets her in that space and addresses her feeling invisible. And she responds with naming him the God who sees. And so I've always taken great heart in that story because of the name, but also because of the situation that it came from, a woman who felt unseen. So that would be one thing I would just encourage all of you to know, that you do have a God who sees you when you feel like no one else does. Your husband doesn't, your kids don't, and you feel unneeded. And know that that came from a woman in that situation where God met her there and said, no, I do see you, and you do have value, and you do have work to do. So go back and get to it. So,
and what is crossing my mind as you're saying that is that acknowledging that we need to see ourselves.
Yes.
And we need to see ourselves outside of the role of being mom, outside of the role of being a wife. And I think that is what feels insecure for a lot of midlife moms. And that's what starts feeling very secure as your kids start to leave, is that it's almost like our security blanket is being pulled away because our kids, as a mom, our kids, like, we do know what to do. We do know how to do that role, even when we don't feel like we know what to do, because it's what we do. We don't have to think about it. We face everything. But when that behind that role of being wife and mom, we are a person. And I think for a lot of us, we have not really looked at ourselves or acknowledged that we are women outside of the roles that we fill. And so part of that whole thing of caring for ourselves and saying goodbye to insecurity is to really see ourselves and to accept who we are. And I was just sharing that with you. One thing that has been helpful for me is when I perhaps say something, and I've been thinking about this at work. I have a new job this year at a new location, with new peers that I work with. And sometimes I'll be silly or something like that. And then part of me will be like, oh, Brenda, I need to go back and like somehow clarify that or apologize for that or say. And then I find my other part of the brain saying, no, Brenda, like, this is who you are. There wasn't anything inappropriate about it. You are kind of, can be, have funny humor, or what I think is funny. Maybe other people don't think it's funny, but I don't have to be all prim and proper all the time, that I can be a little bit outside the box, because that truly is who I am. And so I'm learning to bring my whole self to every place that I go, not just on social media, or not just with my family, not just with my friends, but even at the workplace.
So bring your whole self. Know that you're seen. Bring your whole self.
Yeah.
And I think as we wrap up this episode, I would just have one more encouragement, one more takeaway, is to see each other and know that you're not the only one who's feeling insecure and like they don't know what they're doing. And I have found, just in simple questions of women that I come across, sometimes I don't even know them that well. Maybe we've just sat in the stands together or seen each other at pick up and drop off, but just a simple question that says, I see you, like, how are you? Or how is your kid? Or if you know some detail about their life that you can ask. I've been amazed at how women in their 40s and 50s have opened up. And I've been like, wow, they shared a lot with me, but they don't know me that well. But they knew enough to know, here's someone who sees me and someone who cares, and they needed that so badly. And so I would just encourage us all to see each other, and do that for each other, and ask that question of, how are you really doing? How are your kids? Or if they've shared with you a situation, follow up with just a very simple question of, how are you doing? So you're seen, you're loved, you're known.
And we're here together. finishing up
Yes.
this episode on insecurity. So we just want to remind everyone to join us on Facebook in the Midlife Mom Community and Podcast. So you can search that group. And we have things going all week long. We had prayer on Friday, which we're going to be doing in about an hour here together. And just a great community there. And then you can also join us on Instagram at Midlife Mom Podcast. And then you can find all of our personal resources there too. So we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks. See you
Okay.
later, friends.
Bye.